And then we will start with the second session, which will be a bit of a mixed session in this IOF Photo Event Advisors seminar. We will talk about, as you can see on the screen, some risk analysis from events. I will tell you why the rules changes for 2024. And then to finish off the day, we will talk a bit about how to make our events more sustainable. So the first presentation in this section will be about risk analysis. You have experienced that in the past few years we have more and more risks. We had some event cancellations about which mostly David Rosen will talk about, but also this event that you have on the screen, WOC 2023, had a close call about, and then we decided that since we had the world champs in Switzerland this year, who always have a very good risk analysis and contingency plan portfolio, then we will ask them to present about this and how to not really avoid situations, but to minimize the risk and get ready for such situations. So I have the pleasure to introduce you Reto Pfister, who was the safety officer for WOC 2023. And Reto, it's up to you.
And thanks a lot, Aaron. I hope that I can be heard very well and that you can follow or see my slides. Very pleased that I can talk about WOC for about half an hour, about the risks we had at WOC and how we dealt with these risks. First of all, I would like to introduce myself. You can see the picture. I'm not Swedish. I'm Swiss. I'm 50 years of age, live close to Bern. I'm working as a police officer, so safety issues are my daily business. My orienteering career was not very successful, I have to say, and it ended at the age of 18. I didn't do any orienteering for about 30 years, but I got the pleasure to be part of the WOC team. It was a fantastic experience, and I restarted with orienteering this summer, as you can see. What am I going to speak about? You can see the agenda. I would like to start with some very personal thoughts about the topic of security. We also have to speak about legal requirements. And then that's the main part, point 3, 4, and our concept, how we dealt with the different risks, how we recognize them, how we assess them, and how we try to reduce the risks. I'm going to speak about the main risks we had at WOC, and probably one important point for myself, because I'm a police officer, is how to deal with police, fire brigade, and rescue services. I would also like to answer the questions if the concept proved its worth. And I'd like to close with some recommendations and 3 or 4 final personal thoughts. Probably, I think at the end, we also will have 5 minutes for questions that arise during my presentation. I hope that's fine for you. And I'm going to start with my personal thoughts about the topic of security. For me, and I think for the whole WOC team, it was also clear, and I think it's for every event, safety is not the main issue. It's about sports experience, spectator experience, and not about safety issues. But if we have safety-related incidents in an event, sports and spectator experience can very quickly become very unimportant, and safety issues can be very quickly the main part. So it's about question of responsibility and also a question about liability. I think we as organizers, we have to make sure that everyone is safe, athletes, spectators, and volunteers. Therefore, my main conclusion is you shouldn't neglect safety issues. Don't overdo safety issues. We are not a police service or a military service, but don't underestimate safety issues. It can be very important. I also have to speak about legal requirements. I don't know the exact legal situation in every country that's part of IOF, but I would guess probably more or less there are the same requirements in every country as in Switzerland. If you organize an event, big event like a WOC, you need authorization from the authorities, and you don't get this authorization without a proper safety concept. Safety issues also can be very quickly get a criminal law aspect. If we have injured people, if we have fatalities, it will be the state attorney that is going to open a criminal law case. And if we have injured people, that people, we are very quickly also in the civil law section, where there are big compensation. We talk about big money and big compensations. So don't underestimate safety issues. They can be very important and can be very quickly very expensive. I have here some cases that got very ugly. That's at the football event 1989 in Sheffield, 97 fatalities. We have here one case from Switzerland. It was in 2013, a gymnastic event in Biel, where there was very quickly an unexpected thunderstorm. Tents that were erected collapsed. We had 39 injured people and 1 fatality. Probably a little bit closer to orienteering. That was Zugspitze Marathon in Austria and Germany in 2008 with 2 fatalities. There was a temperature drop, snowfall, and 2 men that died. One that's not so far away, or that was close time-wise, 2021 in China, mountain marathon with an instant weather change, 21 fatalities. The last one, not a heavy one, but one in Sweden, where activists blocked an event that was this summer in July in Stockholm. So you can see it very quickly can get very ugly. And if you are not prepared for such situation, we have a criminal law problem, and we have also a civil law problems with civil law aspects. So from that issue, it's very important that you deal with safety and security aspects. How did we proceed at WOC? It was all about recognizing and describing the risks. It was then about assessing the risks we have recognized and described. And in a third step, we tried to reduce these risks. We were not able to erase the risks. Life is about risks. If I think about weather, we can't change weather, but we can deal in a good way with weather situations. So it was all about reducing risks and implementing measures to reduce the risks. I said it was first about recognizing and describing the risks. When we started with that work, that was the most time-consuming work we had when producing the safety concept. We grouped the risks in 4 different categories. Risks about the environment, that's mainly weather issues. Risks concerning infrastructure, all the things we erected during WOC. Risks about people, that were mainly risks, injuries, fatalities. And a third, category number 4 was public transport or the transport network. This was time consuming. We revised and supplemented several times, went over it again and again. And we finally identified 45 possible risks for our event. I think it's important that you also think the unthinkable. You don't have to overdo it, but you also have to think the unthinkable. And it's well worth that you take your time when thinking about, when recognizing and thinking about possible risks for your event. I have here one example. It's a risk B16. B stands for risks in the infrastructure sector. Was the risk of a cyber attack on our website, and we also try to describe possible impacts. If we had a cyber attack, we wouldn't have been able to produce results, and it would have been a big reputation damage for our event. Imagine a WOC without results. And this recognizing and describing resulted in 45 risks for WOC 2023. Then second step was assessing these risks. So for every risk there was a score. This score was the product of probability of occurrence multiplied with the possible extent of damage. When I'm speaking of the probability, we were thinking about these 45 risks, and we rated every risk with 1 to 5. 1, we decided that it's very unlikely. The probability of occurrence is very unlikely, can almost be ruled out. Up to 5, it's almost certain that it will happen. The same we did with the extent of the possible damage. From 1, very little damage, can be minor injuries that you don't even have to see a doctor, to damage up to 5 that are very high, very serious, up to fatal for a very group of people affected. And the product of probability of occurrence and extent of damage gave us a score from 1 to 25. And we made 4 groups, 1 to 4 green risks that can be neglected. 5 to 9, we gave them the color of yellow, risks of medium height. 10 to 15 orange risks, we decided them to name high risks, and above 16 red risks, very high, very dangerous risks. As I mentioned before, the risks, the green risks from 1 to 4, we neglected them. We didn't touch them again, and we tried to reduce the risks above 5 up to 25. We tried to implement measures to reduce these risks. And here I have an example of a countermeasure. That's the risk number A05. It's a risk concerning the environment. Here it's weather, lightning strikes. In the Alps, mainly in the afternoons when it's nice and hot, there is quite a risk of lightning strikes. That can be very dangerous. And you can see here, it was a risk that we scored with 15. That's a high risk. Only 1 point before a red risk, a very high risk. And you can see our countermeasures. We employed a meteorologist. We were constantly supervising our weather apps. We had a direct contact to a company called Meteo News, who was possible to produce tailor-made weather forecasts for Wilhelmslags and to give warnings if we had critical weather developments. And with this countermeasure, it was possible to reduce the risk from 15, going back one slide, from 15, that's orange, high risk, to 9, to the yellow section, to a risk of medium height. And so with all the other 44 risks, we were looking for countermeasures to reduce them, so that we only had to deal with green and yellow risks, and that we didn't have any more orange or red risks. You won't be able to read this Excel. That's the Risiko analysis, the whole Risiko analysis with all the 45 risks. I have in the lower part taken out one small section. That's the weather section. You can see, unfortunately, it's only in German. You can see we were dealing with heavy wind, with heavy rainfall, with lightning strikes, even with heat, or we had also plans for snow. We had a nice summer. There wasn't any snow, but we were prepared even for snow. And you can see that there is a description of the impact, of the possible impact. You can see the score, the different colors, and then the measures, the countermeasures to reduce the risks, and the new score after the countermeasure. Of course, we had another document where the countermeasures were described in detail. But I'm very willing to give this list to Aaron, to send to all of you, that you can have a close look on all the risks we identified. As I've mentioned, we had 45 risks. They had scored between 4 and 15. We didn't have red risks, but we had risks that were almost red. We had 7 risks in the environment section, 16 risks concerning infrastructure, 17 risks concerning people, and 5 risks concerning transport network, public transport. So I said that we identified the risks, we assessed them, we thought about countermeasures to reduce the risks, but it was not possible to be risk-free. So our main risks were still remaining thunderstorms. I've spoken about that before. Was serious accidents, up to fatalities, accidents of a runner, of an athlete, of a spectator, or of a volunteer. We were dealing with possible arena overload. We had plans how to deal with the disturber. For example, a person running naked through the arena in front of the TV cameras, how we would deal with such a situation. We had plans for threatening situations, a person attacking spectators with a gun, handgun, with a knife. We had plans for an evacuation of the arena. how we would handle such a situation. And we had one main risk that didn't materialize, and that was neglected in the weeks before WOC, was the pandemic. And for the remaining major risks, we produced a plan. In German, it's called Vorbehaltener Entschluss. I don't know if it's the right translation. We produced a document with outlined situations, how to deal in such a case. These outlined situations had a standard structure, always the same structure. We were describing the situation. We were thinking about the success factors to deal with the situation. It had a description of the body, of the decision-making body. We had a small crisis cell who would deal with the situation. We had a description of the responsibilities. Who is responsible for what action? We had also a little plan, only the cornerstones, how we would communicate in such a situation, and some further measures. And if I'm showing this outline situation, these plans, I unfortunately only have it in German. This is the plan for a serious accident or a fatality. And if you can see the different measures we had identified, there were 14, and you can see they are on a very high level, because I think it's not possible to, or it's not worth, or yeah, to make plans that are too detailed. Every case is different. It makes a big difference if a spectator has a heart attack sitting on the grandstand, or we have a runner in the terrain having a big accident or a heavy accident. So it's completely a different situation, and we had only decided to have the main points, how to deal with the situation. And that was our plan to deal with possible fatalities at WOC 2023. I would like to speak about cooperation with police, fire brigade, and rescue services. Probably because I'm a police officer, I think it's an important part. We decided that we would meet the authorities several times before WOC directly on site to speak about our plans, to show them the site, to show them how it would look like during WOC, and mainly to have a direct contact and see the faces, the responsible people. We also try to involve them early on, not only in the last weeks before WOC, but we try to involve them early on to give enough time to do the job. But I personally think it's very important when dealing with authorities, police, ambulance services, fire brigades, whatever, we orienteers, we tend to speak technical jargon that is not understood by authorities, so it's very important that you understood when speaking to authorities. We also decided to receive authorities during the event to show them how it looks like when it's in full service. And that was very appreciated by authorities. And we got a very positive, but we had a very positive experience, and we were highly praised by authorities for this involvement early on and also during the event. So I would recommend that if you plan an event, you do so don't be shy, contact authorities. They like it if they are involved early on. The question is, has the concept we applied, has it proved its worth? You have seen I have written a big yes, but concerning the weather, we were lucky. We needed this luck. As I said, we were well prepared. We had plans how we would deal with weather changes. We had people constantly monitoring the weather. But you also need some luck. In the week following WOC, there was the Swiss week in the same terrain in Flimslags, and Swiss week, they had to abandon 2 stages, to cancel 2 stages due to heavy storms, lightning strikes, and heavy wind. Concerning the infrastructure, we had a lot of identified risks. None of them materialized, luckily. Not even in the slightest. We didn't have any trouble. That went perfect. The same I can apply for the traffic situation. We had not the slightest traffic problems during WOC. Concerning the people, we had to deal with several minor injuries of athletes, spectators and helpers. And we had one very tricky situation during the men's relay with one runner that collapsed in the arena. He collapsed twice. The medical concept worked very well, but didn't work very well, and I'm taking responsibility for that. We should have taken the runner out of the race. We didn't do so. That was my mistake, and probably it shows also that you can be well prepared for an event. You're 98% successful, but we were not prepared for a runner collapsing in the arena. We were prepared medically, but we didn't have a plan how to deal with the situation, take him out of the race, leave him inside the race. Yeah, and that was my mistake. We didn't have a plan for that situation. So I'm speaking about my experience and my recommendations for security sector. I would say number one, it's a very good idea to contact authorities early on, to involve them. Knowing each other is very valuable. If you have a major incident, it's very valuable if you know the faces from police, from fire brigade, and from ambulance services. Involve them early on. It's greatly appreciated. And you get a far better acceptance of the event, of the organization, when you involve them early on. Point number 3, I have mentioned before, don't use orienteering slang. It's not understood by everyone. And number 4, I think it's very important that we find people that take responsibility, that have the courage to do so. I think my thinking about it is, if you are well prepared and you work to the best of your knowledge, you won't be blamed. It's that easy. And the last point, crisis management solutions, the solutions you find, they must be easy and taken in time, and they should be 80% correct. It's not worth having a 100% solution that comes too late. So if you reach 80% within the time given, that's fine. You don't need to have 100% and being too late. That brings me already to the end of my presentation and my final thoughts. It was a great experience to be part of WOC because we were working as one team, organizing committee, the national controllers, and the international advisors. Everyone had his role, but we were working together for a fantastic event. And what was very nice that we were working as one team. Number two is a personal point. WOC brought me back to orienteering, to these fantastic sports. I realized once again this summer how nice and how fantastic the sports is. And number three, luckily, we find people like Brigitte Grüniger, Matthias Nickli, and Hanusli Steinmann that are willing to organize such events. I think that's the most important part, that we find people that are willing to organize such events. That was very nice, and enjoyed every minute of WOC 2023. You can see that's the map of the middle distance final, the area around Lake Kalma, a very tricky area with the world champions Tuvi Alexandersson and Matthias Kiborts, and that brings us to the question. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Reto, and I really enjoyed this presentation, and I was smiling the whole time. I really shared that it was great to be part of it for me as a WOC project manager also. Thank you. Now up to Jaska.
Okay, thanks, Reto. From my side also, these are very important things because of all the regulated things these days. A lot of things and cooperation with the officials and so forth. It's very important. So we are now open to the questions for a while. Please raise your hand or place your question to the chat. Gunther, go ahead, please.
Sorry, I'm again. Does IOF has some document on risk assessment also on their website? I believe many risks are pretty similar in all the events. Of course, there are some local weather, mountains, etc., but majority of risks stays the same for all the high-level events. I think there should be some template available for organizers to see and to read it and be more prepared. Thank you.
Yeah, actually, I will try to answer this question. I don't know anything more than others about this, but actually, this presentation was the startup for that. Actually, Reto, I do have your Excel file about risks, and this presentation and that Excel file will be uploaded to the WOC organizers manual, and it will be available there for future organizers to work out of.
Yeah, that would be nice. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. Good to see you, Blair. Go ahead, please.
Yeah. Hey, thanks. Yeah, probably a comment more than a question. Just picking up on your point about the runner who collapsed in the arena at WOC. That one problem we recognised, DOS Council, also Rules Commission, is that the competition rules as they currently exist don't actually give the organisers the authority to withdraw somebody from a race, and that is one of our proposed changes to the rules for next year.
Yeah,
we
thanks,
can
Blair.
see,
Then
yes,
we have Tapani. Please go ahead.
Concerning this runner that collapsed in the finish area, I was in contact with the runner, and several times after the race we had a a discussion. And as I mentioned before, we should have taken him out about 300 meters before the finish line. Probably we had to decide within about 3 or 4 seconds because he wanted to go on to the finish line. We had about 3 or 4 seconds to decide. I decided wrong, I think. We should have taken him out because he collapsed again. It was a mistake from my side, and I'm taking responsibility for that. But I've spoken with the runner several times, and for him, the situation is okay. He had very good treatment. After the finish line, he was flown to hospital and could leave the hospital the same day. But it was a mistake from my side, a bad decision taken in a very short time under pressure. I wouldn't do so. I would take another decision next time. But next time, situation is completely different, I know. But yeah, it was my mistake.
Okay, thanks, Reto. Then Tapani from Finland. Go ahead, please.
Okay, thank you. Just a comment. Sometimes it's true that something happens. So it might be good to think beforehand what kind of information and who is the person sharing that information, for example, to the media or in your organization, other people's. Thanks.
Thanks, Reto. Do you have comment on that?
Yes, I'm okay with that. As I mentioned before, you have not a certainty, 100% certainty. You also have to be free in your thinking. I think that you just only focus on your papers. You have to be open to react on a situation that is completely different from what you planned. Yeah, every case is different, and but if you don't think about that and you are taken completely by surprise, I think you won't be able to react in a good way. You have to have cases that are prepared and then act according to the situation that you have in front of you.
Yeah, thanks, Reto. Just addition to that, I would propose a good connection with announcers and the people to let the information out in the arena to prepare that beforehand, and who's responsible of what. And there are also different regulations in the different countries about who's responsible of, for example, searching a lost athlete or something like that. So that's also something to take into account.
I haven't showed. We had plans how we would deal, for example, with the evacuation of the arena, but the team would comment how we would proceed like that. I haven't shown, but we had plans what we would say in such an event.
Okay, thanks, Reto. Then we have one more question. Kella, go ahead.
Thank you. It's more like a comment again. I think what you have in this, what I would call an incident response plan, was that most important is that who's making the decisions. So who's responsible for taking the different decisions in the incidents during the incidents. So that's quite important, I think.
Yeah, we had a crisis cell guided by myself with the president, with the race director, a small team. We also were always in contact via radio to take decisions very quickly, because often you don't have time to group in a separate bureau to think it over and over again. You have to take decisions very quickly. And we had a crisis cell prepared for that event.
Okay, thanks, Reto, again for a interesting presentation. And back to you, Aaron.
Okay,